A mystery lies buried beneath the fathomless waters of the Great Flood, a tale so shocking it left even the fallen angels, beings who once stood before the throne of God, trembling in awe. Even the fallen angels could not believe what Michael did to their wives. A ruthless, unyielding act, blazing with the light of divine justice, transformed the fate of these women who dared to love angels into a tragedy that echoes through time. But what could drive immortal beings, who once sang glorious hymns in heaven, to crumble before the power of earthly love? And why did the Archangel Michael's actions shock both heaven and hell to their core? We've all stood at a crossroads where a temptation glimmers like a flame, promising joy, but hiding a darkness that could engulf our entire world. This story isn't just about the Great Flood or the mighty Nephilim. It's about souls trapped in the ocean's depths, singing songs of regret and a divine judgment that brought even rebels to their knees, begging for mercy. Today, we'll step into a world where love and sin intertwine, where Michael's justice carved an indelible message into eternity. You'll uncover a completely new perspective on this biblical story, a mystery that will hold you captive until the very last moment. If your heart is racing with curiosity, drop a comment right now with 888. Unveil the mystery. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to join us in uncovering forgotten pages of the Bible. Get ready, because you're about to embark on a journey where fallen angels, haunting sirens, and Michael's justice will change how you see the world forever. Let's dive in. In heaven, where eternal light radiates from the throne of God, everything gleams with a brilliance beyond human imagination. Palaces forged from emerald and gemstones sparkle like stars fallen from the sky. Divine light doesn't just illuminate, it weaves through every corner, as if the very air is spun from the glory of the Creator. The angels' hymns resound ceaselessly, like an endless river, flowing through golden fields where gentle breezes carry the fragrance of holiness. The angels, warriors and messengers crafted from pure light, know no desire, no weakness of the flesh. They were created for one purpose: to praise God's holiness, safeguard the beauty of creation, and fulfill the will of the one who spoke the universe into being. Every bow before his throne, every note in their songs, testifies to the perfect order of heaven, where darkness has no place, where chaos is an alien concept. But in the stillness of eternity, a subtle stirring began. One day, the gaze of the angels, referred to as the sons of God in Genesis 6:2, crossed the sacred boundary between heaven and earth. They looked down upon the world below, not as protectors, but with an inexplicable curiosity. What they saw wasn't sin or chaos, not yet. They beheld a different kind of beauty, unlike the eternal light of heaven or the glory of the stars. It was the beauty of humanity. The women, with emotions as fierce as crashing waves, with gentle strength in every gesture and the fragile allure of their fleeting lives. Picture these women standing by a shimmering river under the sunlight, their voices clear as morning birds, echoing across lush fields. They wove flower crowns, laughed together, their smiles lighting up the land. They shared stories by the firelight, their eyes gleaming with joy laced with sorrow. Emotions the angels, with their immortal hearts, had never known. This beauty wasn't perfect like heaven's, but its imperfection sparked a strange sensation in the angels. Beings not made to desire began to feel a tremor, like a soft breeze carrying the scent of the forbidden. That moment, that first glance, was no mere passing look. It was a spark, a seed of temptation planted in the hearts of beings who had only known light. The women, with hair flowing in the wind, with voices gentle as rippling water, became an obsession they couldn't erase. They didn't just capture the angels' gaze, they shook the very foundations of heaven. This allure wasn't like the reverence for God's glory. It was deeper, fiercer, and far more dangerous. One glance, one moment was enough to open the door to a tragedy that would shake both heaven and earth. In the hearts of the angels, a silent battle began, like a storm quietly brewing in the calm. They were created to obey, to worship, to reflect the radiant light of the Most High. Every fiber of their being was a testament to holiness, every action a thread in the perfect tapestry of creation. But as their gazes lingered on the earth below, a tiny shadow crept into their minds, like a drop of ink in clear water. The light of heaven, once steadfast as jeweled walls, now flickered like a candle before a mighty wind. Temptation was no longer a fleeting thought. It became a fierce pull, a flame blazing in hearts not designed to feel desire. Day after day, the angels spent more time watching the world below. They saw women dancing in simple ceremonies, their laughter ringing like bells across the fields. They saw the tenderness of mothers cradling their children, telling tales under starlit skies. They saw the resilience of women toiling under the scorching sun, sweat glistening on their brows, yet eyes burning with determination. Humanity's fragility, the brevity of their lives, became a marvel to these immortal beings. What makes human beauty so fleeting, so captivating? That question echoed in their minds like a song they couldn't silence. Was it the fleeting nature of life that made human hearts shine brighter? Was it their fragility, their ability to feel joy intertwined with pain, that awakened a longing the angels had never known? They began to wonder. Could human love, with all its intensity, offer something heaven lacked? Could they touch the warmth of an embrace, feel the joy of a smile, or grasp the pain of a tear? These questions, once unthinkable, became a fire they couldn't extinguish, consuming the hearts of beings created only to serve God. This temptation didn't strike in a single moment. It was a slow process, like water wearing down stone, like a smoldering ember spreading through a dry field. Each glance at the earth was a spark. Each moment they lingered a gust fanning the flames. They began to dream of a life they were forbidden to have, a life where they could love, feel, become part of the human world. As Isaiah 14:12-14 warned of Lucifer, "I will ascend above the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." Desire outside God's will is the seed of all rebellion. The angels stood at a crossroads, loyalty to their divine purpose or surrender to an alien emotion. They knew the boundary they approached wasn't just forbidden, it was sacred. But the whisper of desire grew louder, drowning out God's light, pulling them down a path with no return. In the shadows of heaven, where divine light no longer reached, the angels gathered in secret, their hearts heavy with desire and fear. Leading them was Samjaza, once a radiant warrior with wings that shone like stars, who had stood before God's throne with unshakable loyalty. But now, Samjaza was no longer a messenger of light. Consumed by the fire of desire, his heart pulsed with longing for the women below. The other angels, 200 immortal souls, stood beside him, their gazes no longer fixed on God's glory, but on the fields, rivers, and villages where women lived simple yet captivating lives. They knew the cost of defying God's will. They understood that the boundary between heaven and earth was sacred, etched into the very foundation of creation. Crossing it meant no turning back, but the pull of desire had become an unstoppable force, like a tidal wave sweeping away all reason. Day after day, they met in heaven's dark corners, whispering of forbidden dreams, of a life where they could love and touch the women who stirred their hearts. Finally, a fateful decision was made. According to the Book of Enoch, 200 angels, led by Samjaza, swore a secret oath, a pact sealed with fear and longing. The oath was spoken in darkness, like a curse echoing through heaven's halls. "We will leave heaven together," Samjaza declared, his voice trembling yet resolute. "We will take these women as wives, live as mortals, and share our fate as one." They swore together, hoping their numbers would shield them from God's wrath, a delusion that their collective strength could defy divine justice. This oath wasn't just a personal act. It was a collective rebellion, a betrayal of the Creator, a deep crack in the perfect tapestry of heaven. When they set foot on earth, the air quivered with an eerie sensation, as if creation itself sensed the violation. Trees stood still, winds fell silent, and a heavy quiet enveloped the world. The women, once carefree in their simple lives, began to feel an unseen presence, not the protection of angels, but an attention that quickened their hearts, like standing before an approaching storm. Samjaza's oath didn't just alter the angels' fate. It plunged the world into a vortex of chaos, opening the door to a tragedy that would shake both heaven and earth. From the union of angels and humans, a new race was born, the Nephilim, beings who belonged neither to heaven nor earth, carrying a dangerous blend of divine glory and human desire. According to Genesis 6:4, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. But their renown wasn't a light of salvation. It was a shadow of terror, a reminder of rebellion's consequences. The Nephilim were no ordinary children. From their first cry, they were different, as if born from a fire not of this world. Envision a child born with the strength of angels, but without divine restraint, possessing a human heart, yet lacking the conscience to guide it. They outgrew wooden cradles, their bodies developing at an unnatural pace, as if driven by a supernatural force. Their tiny hands could snap branches like straw. Their young feet shook the earth as they walked. Their eyes gleamed with ancient wisdom, as if they had witnessed the creation of the cosmos, making even the bravest warriors tremble in their presence. Their cries weren't those of infants, but the sound of an uncontrollable power, echoing through valleys and mountains. From their fathers, the fallen angels who once stood before God's throne, who saw the stars formed, the Nephilim inherited ancient knowledge, secrets of heaven humans were never meant to know. They could command the winds, make the earth quake, see into the minds of the weak. But from their mothers, human women, they carried intense emotions, envy, pride, anger, flames unchecked by compassion or humility. This combination birthed a race that belonged to no realm, an aberration that shook the very foundation of creation. Each step of the Nephilim declared their unnatural existence. As they crossed fields, the ground cracked beneath their weight, as if the earth groaned under their presence. When they roared, the sound thundered across distant mountains, silencing birds and scattering wildlife. They weren't just giants in body, they were the embodiment of a cosmic mistake, a fracture in creation's perfect tapestry. Their birth didn't just mark the fall of the angels, it dragged the world into a storm of chaos where God's light was obscured by the darkness of beings never meant to exist. As the Nephilim strode across the earth, the ground groaned under the weight of these beings who did not belong to creation. These giants, born from the union of fallen angels and human women, wielded power far beyond the limits of humanity. A single punch could shatter boulders, reducing sturdy stone walls of villages to rubble. Each step they took shook the earth, splitting lush fields as if torn by an invisible blade. Their roars, deep and resonant like thunder, rolled through valleys and mountains, silencing birds and sending wild beasts fleeing in panic. According to the Book of Enoch, they consumed all the possessions of mankind, and when humans could no longer provide enough, the giants turned to devouring mankind itself. Their brutality stemmed not only from physical might, but also from a supernatural intellect, a dangerous blend of the ancient knowledge of angels and the absence of human morality. Villages, once vibrant with warm wooden homes and the laughter of children, now lay as dust-covered ruins. Wheat fields, once swaying under the sunlight, were trampled into desolate wastelands. Marketplaces, where people traded goods and shared stories, stood silent with only the whistling wind passing through empty stalls. The people lived in constant dread, afraid to leave their homes at sunset, too terrified to lift their eyes to the sky for fear a Nephilim's shadow would appear, blotting out the light like a black storm. These giants needed no weapons, for their bodies were weapons, war machines born of angelic blood and human desire. The terror of the Nephilim lay not only in their strength, but in their merciless cruelty. They knew no compassion, no understanding of life's value. When they gazed upon humanity, they saw not souls created in God's image, but mere fodder to sate their insatiable hunger. An entire village could be wiped out in a single night, homes crushed, families torn apart, cries for help mingling with the cold wind. The presence of the Nephilim turned the earth into a battlefield where each day of survival was a miracle, where the light of hope was extinguished by the darkness of terror. Under the dominion of the Nephilim, humanity, created in the image of God, began to lose the light within their souls. The values that once bound communities, kindness, honesty, faith, eroded like a flame snuffed out by a cold wind. As Genesis 6:5 declares, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time." This depravity arose not only from the Nephilim's destruction, but from humanity itself, as they began to emulate the arrogance and brutality of the giants. Villages, once radiant with campfires and songs, became fortresses of fear. Hymns praising God, once sung each morning, were replaced by desperate pleas or, worse, worship of the Nephilim as false gods. Some, driven by fear and despair, built crude altars, offering sacrifices to the giants in hopes of protection. They knelt before these unnatural beings, calling them by names of power as if they could replace God. This idolatry was not just a betrayal of faith, but a loss of humanity's very essence, the sacred image bestowed upon them by God. Each day, the earth sank deeper into darkness. Fathers no longer taught their sons to plow or hunt, but to hide, to pray in silence to avoid detection. Mothers ceased telling fairy tales, instead whispering warnings about the giants lurking in the shadows. Children, once playing in the fields, now huddled in dark corners, their eyes filled with fear. This depravity was not merely a material loss, but a spiritual wound, a breaking of the covenant between God and creation. The earth, once declared very good in Genesis 1:31, had become a place where the cries of the innocent rose like smoke, reaching heaven, pleading for deliverance. From his eternal throne, God looked down upon the earth with eyes of both love and justice. He heard the cries of the innocent, rising from ravaged villages, from shattered families, from souls crushed by the Nephilim's darkness. The earth, once his radiant garden, now bore scars. Trampled fields, blood-stained rivers, mountains trembling under the might of beings not of his design. God's sorrow was not mere disappointment. It was a profound pain, like a father watching his beloved child stray into darkness. He saw the women, once at the heart of temptation, now living in the agony of their misguided choices. He saw men, once proud protectors of their families, now begging for mercy from the giants. He saw children, once the light of the future, now imprisoned by fear. Each cry for help, each tear, was a dagger in the heart of creation. God's patience, vast as the heavens, had reached its limit. The earth could no longer bear this distortion, this burden of beings not meant to exist. God's decision came not from blind anger, but from justice tempered with mercy. He could not allow his creation, once proclaimed very good, to languish in darkness forever. As Genesis 7:11 foretells, he prepared an unprecedented judgment. All the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. The great flood was not merely rain. It was a symbol of purification, a divine wrath to erase what had defiled the earth. But before the deluge came, heaven stirred, preparing for a battle unlike any before. In heaven, where eternal light still shone, an army was summoned. The archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael, rose as God's warriors, ready to execute divine justice. Michael, the leader, stood as a symbol of strength and loyalty, his sword blazing with light, as if forged from God's own glory. His eyes unwavering, his heart resolute, he bore the weight of a warrior chosen to restore creation's order. Beside him stood Gabriel, the messenger of God's word, Uriel, the flame of truth, and Raphael, the healer turned warrior. They were not mere symbols of peace. They were generals forged in the fire of justice, prepared to face giants as tall as mountains. The angelic host gathered, their shimmering wings stretching across the sky like a sea of light eclipsing the stars. Their swords, not of metal but of divine radiance, were sharp enough to cut through the darkness of sin. They fought not for personal glory, but for God's will, to restore the broken order, to bring light back to a world drowned in shadow. As Romans 12:19 proclaims, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord." This battle was not merely physical, it was a divine judgment, a declaration that no power, whether Nephilim or fallen angel, could defy the will of the Most High. On earth the air grew heavy. Animals grew restless, as if sensing an impending event. The wind carried strange sounds, like the whisper of an approaching storm. Humanity, trapped between fear of the Nephilim and heaven's silence, began to sense a shift. They did not know that above, an angelic army was preparing, not to destroy for destruction's sake, but to purify, to restore the earth's lost purity. Michael, sword in hand, stood ready, not just as a warrior, but as a symbol of justice, prepared to confront the consequences of rebellion. When God's judgment arrived, the sky didn't merely darken, it became a pitch-black veil, as if creation's light was swallowed by divine wrath. Water erupted from the earth's depths, as if the earth wept for the wounds it had endured. Rain fell not as nurturing drops for crops, but as liquid blades, hammering down like blows from the heavens. According to Genesis 7:11-12, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. Rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. This deluge was not merely a natural event, it was a symbol of purification, a declaration that what did not belong to God's design would be erased. The Nephilim, giants once proud in their unmatched strength, now faced an enemy they could not defeat. They fled, climbing the highest mountains, clinging to rocks like desperate beasts. But the flood waters rose relentlessly, swallowing mountains as if they had never existed. Their roars, once shaking cities, now merged with the howl of the flood, meaningless against God's power. Proud strongholds, ancient forests, vibrant villages, all were swept away, leaving a vast ocean reflecting the Creator's wrath and sorrow. Amid the deluge, a single spark of hope remained: Noah's Ark, floating like a tiny flame in a sea of grief. But even as the ark carried God's promise, the fate of those who caused this chaos, the fallen angels and their wives, awaited not salvation, but a judgment more terrifying than death itself. As the waters of the great flood engulfed the earth, sweeping away the giant Nephilim and erasing the traces of chaos, the fallen angels, those who ignited this tragedy, were not spared from God's wrath. Once radiant warriors with wings shimmering like stars, who sang glorious hymns before the eternal throne, they were now cast into a profound darkness where heaven's light could not reach. According to 2 Peter 2:4, God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell, delivering them into chains of darkness to be held for judgment. These chains did not merely bind their bodies, but shackled their souls, trapping them in an eternal nightmare with no escape. The darkness of their prison was not a cave or a physical dungeon. It was a spiritual abyss where every memory of heaven's glory became a razor-sharp blade, cutting deep into their hearts. They, who once soared through celestial skies, were now confined in a terrifying silence, hearing only the echoes of their own sins. But their punishment did not end with captivity. The most horrific torment was being forced to witness the destruction of what they cherished most. From the darkness, they saw their Nephilim children, their pride swallowed by the floodwaters, their roars blending with the howl of the deluge. They heard the anguished cries of their wives, the women they had vowed to protect, now abandoned on a desolate earth, facing a fate more dreadful than death. Each cry of the Nephilim, each tear of their wives, was a dagger piercing their souls. They could not close their eyes, could not turn away, could not escape the reality they had caused. The cities they had helped build with ancient knowledge, the kingdoms their Nephilim had ruled, were now mere ashes beneath the waves. Their rebellion, once painted with beauty and passion, was reduced to rubble in the darkness. This punishment was not just confinement, it was an eternal nightmare, where they lived forever with the memory of their betrayal, with the pain of what they lost to desire. The women who loved the fallen angels were once captivated by their supernatural beauty, by sweet promises of a love that transcended all boundaries. They were not ordinary women, but souls who dared to choose passion over obedience, stepping into the fire of love rather than the light of holiness. Among them stood Nama, a woman with beauty as smooth as silk, a voice burning like flame, and a proud heart that refused to yield. Nama did not merely love an angel, she led other women down the forbidden path, cloaking herself in pride like a mantle, heedless of warnings about God's wrath. Their love for the angels was not a fleeting emotion. It was a consuming fire, so intense it blinded them to God's will. When the fallen angels appeared before them, with shimmering wings and eyes deep as the night sky, their hearts trembled, as if the universe itself whispered words of love. They believed this love was their destiny, a gift surpassing the limits of heaven and earth. But when the floodwaters receded, leaving a ravaged earth, they stood amid the ruins of their misguided choices, their hearts shattered by harsh reality. Some women fell to their knees in agony, tears mingling with the dust, pleading for God's forgiveness. They recalled the days they sang by the river, the days they dreamed of an eternal love, only to realize that love had plunged the world into darkness. But others, like Nama, did not bow. With defiant eyes, she stood tall, embracing her sin like a badge of honor. She felt no regret for her love, yet she could not foresee the judgment awaiting, not from the flood, but from the hand of the archangel Michael, bearer of God's sword of justice. Their love, once radiant as a flame, was now ash, leaving them to face a fate no one could have imagined. The great flood may have erased the Nephilim and cleansed the earth, but the fate of the wives did not end in the waters. They were not permitted to die, not allowed to find release in destruction. Instead, they faced a judgment more terrifying, transformation into sirens, half human, half beast creatures, imprisoned forever in the depths of the ocean. As Jude 1:13 describes, they became wild waves of the sea, foaming up their shame. Their beauty, once the source of temptation, became a curse. Their voices, once clear as birdsong, turned into haunting melodies that lured sailors to their doom. The vast, unforgiving ocean became their prison and the stage for their tragedy. Each wave was a reminder of their sin, each drop a tear of regret. They glided through icy currents, their long hair flowing like seaweed, their eyes glinting like fallen stars. But all was a curse. Their songs brought no joy. They were the cries of trapped souls, echoing through the ocean, drawing the unfortunate into a vortex of destruction. They did not sing for happiness, but for pain, each note a memory of the days they loved, the days they bore Nephilim, and the days they watched the world collapse. Some sirens, like Nama, retained their defiant gaze, singing songs of challenge as if still refusing to bow to God's justice. But most were trapped in madness, their minds haunted by the cries of drowning men, by memories of their Nephilim children swallowed by the waves. They found no freedom in the ocean, only eternal captivity, where each wave was a reminder of their betrayal. They became symbols of the consequences of crossing sacred boundaries, souls caught between beauty and pain, between love and punishment. In this tragedy, the Archangel Michael stood as a tower of justice, executing God's will with unwavering resolve. His sword, gleaming with divine light, was not a weapon to destroy flesh, but a tool to etch the fate of the rebellious into eternity. Michael, with steely eyes and an unyielding heart, oversaw the transformation of the wives into sirens. His action was not merely a judgment, it was an eternal mark on the spiritual realm, a proclamation that no one, angel or human, could defy God's will without consequence. Even the fallen angels, imprisoned in darkness, could not believe Michael's actions. They had thought their love, though misguided, might be forgiven. They had hoped their wives, the women they cherished, would be spared. But when Michael raised his sword of justice, transforming those women into sirens, they trembled in awe. According to the Book of Enoch, Michael acted not with satisfaction or anger, but with the solemnity of a warrior fulfilling God's will. His sword shone not to kill, but to engrave a lesson. Rebellion, even driven by love, always leads to suffering. The transformation of the wives was not just punishment, it was a warning for all ages. Michael, as the executor of justice, stood as an unquenchable flame amid the darkness, reminding all that creation's order cannot be broken. His actions not only stunned the fallen angels, but left an enduring mark on spiritual history, a story echoing through the oceans, through time, to this day. The fate of the wives, transformed into sirens, is not merely an ancient tale. It is a mirror reflecting the consequences of misguided choices. They are not romantic figures from fairy tales, but symbols of eternal regret, trapped in an ocean of sin. Each song they sing is a reminder that love, though beautiful, can become a consuming fire if it defies God's will. Each glinting glance is a curse, drawing others into darkness, just as they were once drawn into the temptation of the fallen angels. This story warns that sacred boundaries cannot be crossed without cost. Michael's justice, though harsh, is a symbol of divine order, a reminder that every action carries consequences and no one, angel or human, can escape God's will. The sirens, with their songs echoing through the ocean, are living proof that rebellion, even fueled by love, leads to suffering. Have you ever considered that a choice, however beautiful, could lead to a fate you cannot escape? This story is not just about fallen angels or their wives. It is about each of us standing at the crossroads of temptation. Michael's punishment, though it shocked the fallen angels, calls us to reflect on our choices, on obedience and on faith. Let the sorrowful songs of the sirens resound as a reminder. God's light always outshines any temptation, and His justice will always find those who dare to defy it. Now that you've heard this story, pause for a moment and reflect. Is there a lesson from the sirens, from the arrogance of the fallen angels, that you can carry into your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What moment in this story touched your heart? And why? We'd love to hear your story. If you found this video worth sharing, hit that like button, send it to those who need its message, and subscribe with notifications on to catch every biblical mystery we uncover. Walk in the light, keep your heart steadfast against temptations that could lead you astray, and always remember that God's justice, as executed by Michael, is a flame that never fades. We'll see you in the next video, where more forgotten stories await to be revealed. Stay with us and let the light guide your path.